No one answered the desperate screams of the chained alien girl, except one human. The neon lights of New Shanghai's alien quarter flickered weakly in the perpetual smog, casting sickly shadows across Dax Dickman's face as he made his way through the crowded streets. His armored vest creaked softly with each step, the material cool against his bare chest in the humid evening air. The short, cropped, brown hair on his head and his neatly trimmed beard were starting to dampen with sweat, but he paid it no mind. This wasn't exactly the safest part of the sprawling megacity, but that had never bothered Dax much. After 8 years in the Terran Special Forces, he'd seen far worse than the petty criminals and small-time thugs that called these streets home. Besides, sometimes the shadier parts of town held the best opportunities for someone with his particular skill set. A piercing scream cut through the general din of the city, causing Dax to pause mid-stride. The sound was desperate, filled with raw terror and pain. What caught his attention wasn't just the intensity of the cry, but how everyone else simply ignored it. The various alien species crowding the street, from towering Andromedans to diminutive Proxima Centaurians, continued about their business as if they hadn't heard a thing. "Fucking hell," Dax muttered, his hand instinctively moving to check the plasma pistol at his hip. So much for a quiet evening. He tracked the sound to a narrow alley between two dilapidated buildings. The screams were getting weaker, more choked. Whatever was happening, time was running out. The alley opened into a small courtyard, dimly lit by a single flickering lamp. What Dax saw made his blood boil. A female figure was suspended from a rusty pipe, chains wrapped so tightly around her throat that they were clearly cutting off her air supply. Her green skin was pale, almost gray, and her long white hair hung in matted strands around her face. She wore what appeared to be a torn gray bodysuit that left little to the imagination, with deep cuts along the sides exposing more of her elegant curves than it concealed. But what struck Dax wasn't her beauty. It was the pure terror in her eyes as she struggled weakly against her bonds. "Well, well," a gravelly voice called from the shadows. "Looks like we've got ourselves an audience." 3 figures emerged from the darkness. The leader was a burly Rigelian, his scaled hide gleaming dully in the weak light. His 2 companions were human, local muscle for hire, judging by their cheap cybernetic enhancements. "Walk away, friend," the Rigelian said, showing his pointed teeth in what might have been meant as a smile. "This is private business." Dax's response was to crack his knuckles, a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the confined space. "Yeah, I don't think so. Let her go, and maybe you'll walk out of here under your own power." The Rigelian's laugh was like gravel in a blender. 3 against 1, human? Bad odds. "For you," Dax replied with a predatory grin. The first thug rushed him with a clumsy swing. Dax stepped inside the attack, driving his elbow into the man's throat while simultaneously sweeping his legs. The cybernetically enhanced human hit the ground with a satisfying crunch. The second attacker was smarter, hanging back and drawing a shock baton. The weapon hummed to life with crackling energy. Dax feinted left, then drove forward as the man overcommitted to his defense. A quick series of strikes to the solar plexus and jaw left the second assailant sprawled beside his companion. The Rigelian proved more challenging. His scaled hide deflected Dax's first 2 strikes, and a counterattack nearly took Dax's head off. But years of combat experience had taught Dax that every species had its weak points. He waited for the Rigelian to overextend, then struck the sensitive area just below the jaw, where the scales were thinnest. The alien went down hard, gurgling and clutching his throat. "Should have taken my offer," Dax said, retrieving the keys from the Rigelian's belt. He quickly moved to the chained woman, whose struggles had grown increasingly feeble. The chains fell away with a metallic clatter, and she collapsed into his arms, gasping desperately for air. Her skin was cool to the touch, and he could feel her heart racing as she pressed against him. "Easy now," he murmured, supporting her weight. "You're safe." Her eyes, a striking shade of violet, met his. "Why?" she managed between ragged breaths. "Why did you help?" Dax shrugged, trying to ignore how perfectly she fit against him. Let's just say I have a problem with watching people die when I can do something about it." She studied him for a moment, then a small smile curved her lips. "I'm Liana," she said softly. "Dax Dickman," he replied, helping her stand more steadily. "Want to tell me why these gentlemen were trying to kill you?" Liana's expression darkened. "Rexar Blackheart," she spat the name like a curse. "He runs the criminal syndicate in this sector. Discovered something I wasn't supposed to know. And he decided to make an example of you? She nodded, unconsciously moving closer to him. There will be others. Rexer doesn't give up easily. Dax glanced at the unconscious forms around them, then back at the beautiful alien woman who seemed determined to stay within arm's reach. He knew he should walk away. Getting involved in local criminal politics was never smart, but something in those violet eyes made him pause. Maybe it was the hint of steel behind the fear, or the way she held herself despite her ordeal. Or maybe he was just tired of walking away from people who needed help. Well, he said with a roguish grin, looks like my evening just got a lot more interesting. Dax's safe house was a converted maintenance level near the top of an old industrial tower, 30 stories above the neon-lit streets of New Shanghai's alien quarter. The space was sparse but functional, with reinforced walls and a security system that would make most military installations jealous. Liana stood by the panoramic window, her graceful silhouette outlined against the city's technicolor glow. She'd cleaned up in the sonic shower, and her white hair now cascaded down her back in gentle waves. The spare clothes Dax had provided, a simple black tank top and tactical pants, somehow managed to look elegant on her lithe frame. Your dwelling is unexpected, she said, turning to face him. Her violet eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. Most humans I've encountered prefer more conventional accommodations. Dax was trying very hard not to stare at the way she moved. Every gesture was fluid, almost hypnotic. Most humans haven't spent time in special forces, he replied, busying himself with the security feeds. Sometimes conventional gets you killed. And is that why you helped me? Liana asked, gliding closer. Because conventional would have been to walk away. Her proximity was intoxicating. The subtle alien scent of her skin reminded him of spring rain and something exotic he couldn't quite place. I helped because it was right, he said, meeting her gaze. Everything else is just details. A smile played at the corners of her mouth. Such a human answer. Your species is fascinating, you know. So young compared to many races, yet you possess such intensity. She reached out, her fingers trailing lightly over his forearm. Such passion. Dax felt his pulse quicken at her touch. The temperature in the room seemed to raise several degrees. Liana, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. We should probably discuss your situation with Rexer. She hummed, not withdrawing her hand. Always so focused on duty, another admirable human trait. But perhaps, she stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the coolness radiating from her skin. We could discuss other matters first. Dax swallowed hard. The attraction between them was electric, almost tangible in the air. But he was also acutely aware of her vulnerable position. You've been through a lot today, he said carefully. I wouldn't want to take advantage. Her laugh was like silver bells. Oh, Dax, she purred. My people don't share human hesitations about such things. When we feel attraction, we embrace it. Life is too precious to waste on doubt. Before he could respond, his security system chimed. Dax reluctantly stepped away from Liana to check the feeds. We've got movement in the lower levels, he reported, professionalism taking over. 3 teams, moving in a search pattern. Rexer's men, Liana said, all playfulness vanishing from her voice. They're faster than I expected. Dax was already moving to his weapons cache. They won't find us up here, but we should start planning our next move. He pulled out a sleek rifle and began checking his charge. What exactly did you discover that made Rexar want you dead? Liana's expression grew serious. He's been working with the consortium, she said quietly. They're planning something big, something that could destabilize the entire sector. The consortium, Dax frowned. The interstellar criminal organization was notorious for its brutality. That's not Rexar's usual style. He's always been more of a local operator. Things are changing. Liana moved to stand beside him at the weapons cache. The old power structures are shifting. Rexar sees an opportunity to expand his influence. She picked up a plasma pistol with surprising familiarity. I discovered their timetable. The operation is scheduled to begin in 3 days. Dax raised an eyebrow at her weapon handling. You're full of surprises, she gave him a wicked smile. You have no idea. The security system chimed again. The search teams had reached the 20th floor. Dax made a decision. I've got some contacts in the Terran Intelligence Service, he said. They might be interested in what you know about the consortium. And you trust them? About as far as I can throw them, Dax admitted. But they're predictable. They'll want to stop whatever the consortium is planning, if only to maintain the status quo. Liana considered this, absently checking the pistol's charge. It could work, she said finally, but we'll need proof, documentation, something concrete. Rexar keeps his main database in the Crimson Tower, Dax said, pulling up a holographic map of the district. Heavy security, but not impossible to breach with the right planning. And the right partner, Liana added, giving him a meaningful look that sent heat coursing through his veins. The search teams reached the 25th floor. Dax forced himself to focus on the tactical situation, even as Liana's presence threatened to derail his thoughts. We should rest while we can, he said. Tomorrow we'll need to start gathering intel on the tower's defenses. Rest? Liana's voice held a note of amusement. Is that really what you want to do right now? Dax turned to face her, and the look in her eyes nearly undid his resolve. She moved closer, her free hand coming to rest on his chest. The coolness of her touch seemed to burn through his shirt. My people believe that life's greatest moments come when we embrace our desires, she whispered. When we stop thinking and start feeling. Dax's hand found her waist, drawing her closer. Your people sound wise, he managed. They are, she breathed, her lips inches from his. But they've never known humans, never experienced your fire, your passion. Her fingers traced patterns on his chest. I think I'm beginning to understand why so many species find your race so compelling. The security system chimed one final time. The search teams had moved on, heading back down the tower, but Dax barely registered it. The world had narrowed to this moment, to the fascinating creature in his arms. Liana, he started, but she pressed a finger to his lips. No more words, she said softly. Show me that human fire. And as their lips met, Dax realized that sometimes the most unexpected missions led to the most remarkable discoveries. Dawn painted New Shanghai's skyline in shades of crimson and gold as Dax studied the holographic blueprints of the Crimson Tower floating above his planning table. Liana's head rested against his shoulder, her cool skin a pleasant contrast to the morning heat. The previous night had changed something between them, deepening their connection in ways that transcended physical attraction. The security systems are impressive, Liana murmured, her finger tracing a path through the hologram. But there's always a weak point. We just need to… She froze, her violet eyes widening as a new image appeared in the display. Dax felt her tension and followed her gaze to the security personnel file that had just loaded. The face staring back at him was familiar, painfully so. Well, shit, he breathed. You know him? Liana asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Adrian Rhodes, Dax said, his voice tight with memory. We served together in the Ghost Squad. He was my second in command, my best friend. He paused, old wounds reopening. Until Proxima Prime. Liana's fingers intertwined with his, offering silent support. What happened? A mission went sideways. Bad intel, civilian casualties. Dax's jaw clenched. Adrian wanted to bury it, said it would destroy the squad's reputation. I couldn't live with that. Turned myself in, took full responsibility as squad leader. Adrian didn't appreciate the gesture. He abandoned you, Liana said softly, understanding dawning in her eyes. Worse, he testified against me, painted himself as the voice of reason who tried to stop his reckless commander. Dax's laugh was bitter. Got himself promoted while I faced the tribunal. Last I heard, he'd left the service for private security. Guess now I know where he landed. Liana shifted to face him, her expression thoughtful. This complicates things. You think? Dax ran a hand through his hair. Adrian knows all my tactics, all my tells, and he's got a personal grudge. Then we'll have to do something he won't expect. A mischievous glint appeared in Liana's eyes. Something that combines human audacity with alien creativity. Dax raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Your friend expects the tactical, methodical Dax Dickman he knew in the service. Liana's hand slid up his chest, her touch sending electricity through his nerves. But that Dax didn't have a partner like me. What did you have in mind? Liana's smile was both seductive and predatory. My people have certain abilities that most humans don't know about, abilities that could be very useful for infiltration. She stepped back, and Dax watched in amazement as her green skin began to shift, the color flowing like liquid until she was a perfect mirror of the woman in the security file he'd been reviewing earlier. That's, inconvenient, Dax managed, trying to process what he just witnessed. Liana shifted back to her natural form with a fluid grace. We evolved as hunters, she explained. Mimicry was essential for survival. Most of my people keep this ability hidden from other species. We find it tends to make them uncomfortable. I can imagine, Dax said, mind already racing with possibilities. But Adrian will be expecting infiltration attempts. He'll have countermeasures. Countermeasures designed for technology, not biology. Liana pressed against him again, her natural form somehow even more alluring after her demonstration. And he certainly won't be expecting you to walk in through the front door. While you slip in through the back, Dax finished, catching her meaning. It's risky. If he realizes it's me, he won't be able to resist confronting you personally, Liana said confidently. His type never can. Pride and old wounds will make him sloppy. Dax studied her face, marveling at how quickly she'd assessed Adrian's psychology. You're dangerous, you know that? Says the human who single-handedly defeated 3 armed attackers to save a stranger. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. Your species constantly surprises us, you know. So young, yet so fearless. So willing to risk everything for what you believe is right. Is that admiration I hear? Dax teased, though her words stirred something deep in his chest. Among other things, she purred before stepping back to business. We'll need supplies, equipment, a way to get close enough to the tower without triggering external sensors. Dax nodded, forcing his mind back to tactical considerations. I've got a contact in the underground markets. Ex-military supplier named Morgan. She can get us what we need. Can she be trusted? About as much as any arms dealer, Dax admitted, but she owes me for getting her out of a tight spot with the Andromeda cartel. Liana began pulling up more detailed scans of the tower's security systems. We'll need to move fast. Rexar's operation with the consortium is still scheduled for 3 days from now. Then we hit the tower tomorrow night, Dax decided. Adrian always was a creature of habit. He'll be conducting his personal security review at 0200 hours. That's when the internal systems are most vulnerable. And when he's most likely to be distracted by your appearance, Liana added with a knowing smile. You humans and your predictable patterns. Says the woman who can change her entire appearance at will, Dax countered, pulling her back against him. Any other surprises I should know about? Liana's laugh was musical. Oh, many, she whispered against his ear. But some things are better discovered than explained. The planning session devolved from there. Tactical considerations temporarily forgotten in favor of more intimate explorations. But even as Dax lost himself in Liana's embrace, part of his mind was already preparing for the confrontation to come. Tomorrow he would face his past in the form of Adrian Rhodes, and this time he wouldn't be the only one fighting for justice. The underground market of New Shanghai's alien quarter was a maze of neon-lit stalls and shadowy alcoves where anything could be bought for the right price. Dax led Liana through the crowded passages, his hand resting protectively at the small of her back. She'd shifted her appearance slightly, enough to be unremarkable but not enough to drain her energy reserves before their mission. Your contact's establishment is interesting, Liana observed, eyeing the holographic sign that read, Morgan's Martial Marvels, with barely concealed amusement. Morgan has a flair for the dramatic, Dax admitted, scanning the crowd. Something felt off. The usual mix of species was present. Burly Ragellians, serpentine Ophidians, ethereal Luminari, but their movements seemed too coordinated, too purposeful. We're being watched, Liana whispered, pressing closer to him under the pretense of examining a vendor's wares. I noticed. Dax's hand drifted to his concealed plasma pistol. Adrian's people? No. Liana's violet eyes narrowed. Different energy signatures. Mercenaries, I think. Professional ones. They reached Morgan's shop, a surprisingly clean storefront compared to its neighbors. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing an empty showroom. Morgan? Dax called out, every nerve tingling with warning. It's Dickman. Silence answered him. This is wrong, he muttered, drawing his weapon. Morgan never leaves the shop unattended. A soft click from behind made them both freeze. Sorry, old friend, Morgan's familiar voice said. But Adrian's offer was too good to refuse. Dax turned slowly, keeping Liana behind him. Morgan stood in the doorway, her cybernetic eye glowing red in the dim light. Behind her, a dozen armed figures materialized from stealth fields. "Really, Morgan?" Dax sighed. "After I saved your ass in the Andromeda sector?" "Business is business," she replied, though her organic eye wouldn't meet his. "Adrian wants you alive. The girl, well, that's negotiable." Liana's laugh was unexpected, drawing everyone's attention. "Oh, you humans," she purred, her voice taking on an otherworldly resonance. "Always so quick to assume you have the upper hand." Before anyone could react, she shifted, not into another humanoid form, but into something that seemed to bend the light around her. Her skin became translucent, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that sent waves of disorientation through the mercenaries. Dax didn't waste the opportunity. He dove forward, tackling Morgan as plasma bolts began flying wildly through the shop. The mercenaries, their targeting systems scrambled by Liana's display, were shooting at shadows in each other. "That's new," he grunted, disarming Morgan with a quick strike to her cybernetic arm's power coupling. "What the hell is she?" Morgan gasped, staring at Liana's ethereal form as it danced between the confused attackers. "The woman I love," Dax replied simply, before rendering his former friend unconscious with a precise blow. The firefight lasted less than a minute. When it was over, most of the mercenaries lay stunned or unconscious, victims of their own crossfire and Liana's impossible movements. Liana shifted back to her base form, though her skin retained a slight phosphorescent glow. "That was invigorating," she said, stretching like a satisfied cat, "though perhaps a bit showier than we planned." Dax moved to her side, checking her for injuries despite knowing she was probably more durable than him. "You never mentioned you could do that." "You never asked," she teased, before growing serious. "It's an aggressive display form used in ancient tribal wars. It takes a lot of energy to maintain." "Adrian knew we'd come here," Dax said, quickly gathering supplies from Morgan's stock. "He's trying to wear us down before we reach the tower. Then he doesn't understand what he's dealing with." Liana helped him load energy cells into a duffel bag. "My people don't tire easily. And humans..." She paused, admiring the efficient way he moved through the chaos. "Humans seem to grow stronger in the face of adversity." "Sweet talker," Dax grinned, but his expression sobered as he checked Morgan's computer terminal. "Adrian's got teams at all my usual suppliers. He's trying to cut off our resources." "Then we changed the game." Liana's eyes gleamed with that predatory intelligence he'd come to adore. "If he's watching your contacts, he's diverted forces from the tower itself. You want to hit it now? Without proper equipment? The best ambush is the one your enemy thinks impossible." She pressed against him, her slightly luminescent skin casting ethereal patterns across his face. "Unless you're not up for a challenge." Dax pulled her into a fierce kiss, drawing strength from her cool touch and unwavering confidence. "You're going to get me killed," he murmured against her lips. "No," she said softly, seriously. "I'm going to help you live like you never have before." They gathered what supplies they could carry and slipped out through Morgan's back entrance. The alien quarter streets had cleared, civilians sensing the coming storm. "Adrian will know we survived," Dax said as they moved through the shadows. "He'll be expecting us." "Good." Liana's smile was dangerous. "Let him prepare for the ghosts of your past. He'll never see our future coming." As they made their way toward the Crimson Tower's looming silhouette, Dax found himself grateful for whatever twist of fate had led him to hear Liana's screams in that alley. In trying to save her, he'd found something he never knew he was missing: a partner who matched his courage, his determination, and his growing capacity for love. Now they just had to survive the next few hours to explore what that meant. The Crimson Tower lived up to its name, its red-tinted windows reflecting the last rays of sunset as Dax and Liana approached through the business district. They ditched their tactical gear in favor of corporate attire. Dax in a sharp black suit that emphasized his military bearing, Liana in an elegant business dress that complemented her slightly altered appearance. "Remember," Dax murmured as they approached the main entrance, "Adrian will be watching the security feeds personally. He'll recognize my gait, my mannerisms." "Then give him a show," Liana replied, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Let him focus on you while I make contact with our new friend. Their friend was Rexar's chief financial officer, Theron Vale, who had reached out through encrypted channels after their escape from Morgan's shop. The Andromedian claimed to have evidence of both Rexar's and Adrian's crimes, and a grudge against both men. The lobby's security scan passed over them, and Dax felt Liana's grip tighten slightly. They'd gambled that her biological shapeshifting wouldn't trigger the same alerts as technological disguises. "Mr. Dickman?" A familiar voice called from the security desk. "How unexpected." Dax turned to face Adrian Rhodes, who looked exactly as he remembered. Sharp features, calculating eyes, and the same slight smirk that had once preceded their most successful missions. "Adrian," Dax nodded coolly. "Still hiding behind a desk, I see." "Some of us learn to evolve beyond brute force," Adrian replied, his gaze sliding to Liana. "And you must be the new asset everyone's talking about. Fascinating abilities you displayed at Morgan's." Liana's smile was diplomatic, but Dax felt the predatory tension in her frame. "The pleasure is all yours, I'm sure." "Indeed," Adrian gestured to the elevators. "Since you're here, why don't we catch up? For old time's sake, why not?" Dax matched his former friend's smirk. "I'm sure we have plenty to discuss." As they entered the elevator, Liana pressed close to Dax, her breath tickling his ear. "Theron's office, level 47. Don't take too long with your reunion." The elevator doors closed, and Dax watched Liana disappear behind them, already knowing she'd find another way up. He turned to Adrian, noting the 4 armed guards that had materialized from alcoves. "Really?" Dax sighed. "The whole trapped in an elevator routine?" Adrian shrugged. "You always did appreciate the classics." His expression hardened. "What I don't appreciate is you interfering with my operation. The Dax Dickman I knew understood the necessity of getting his hands dirty." "The Dax Dickman you knew died at Proxima Prime," Dax replied, "along with my trust in men who justify atrocities with pragmatism." The elevator began to rise, and Adrian's smirk returned. "Let me show you something. A little trip down memory lane." Meanwhile, 47 floors up, Liana emerged from a maintenance shaft to find Theron Vale waiting in his office. The Andromedian's crystalline features caught the city lights, creating rainbow patterns across his desk. "You're either very brave or very foolish," he said by way of greeting. "I'm told it's a common trait among those who associate with humans," Liana replied, maintaining her business disguise. "You have something for us?" Theron produced a data crystal. "Everything you need to expose both Rexar and Adrian." But he hesitated. "There's more. The consortium isn't just planning a power grab. They're after something specific, something they think only humans can provide." Before Liana could respond, the office lights flickered. Emergency shutters slammed down over the windows. "He's locked down the building," Theron said unnecessarily. "Your human friend can handle himself," Liana finished, pocketing the crystal. "But we should move. Now." Back in the elevator, Dax was watching recorded footage from Proxima Prime, the mission that had ended his career. But something was wrong with the images. "You edited this," he realized. "Changed the sequence of events." "I improved them," Adrian corrected. "Showed what should have happened if you'd followed my lead instead of your conscience." He gestured to the guards. "And now you'll help me finish what we started there. The consortium has plans for human potential, Dax. Plans that could change everything." "You mean weapons," Dax spat. "Using humans as test subjects for your experiments. Using willing volunteers to unlock humanity's true capabilities," Adrian countered. "You could be part of that. Both of you could." The elevator stopped between floors. Dax smiled. "You know what your problem always was, Adrian?" He shifted his weight slightly. "You talk too much." The lights went out. In the darkness, Dax moved with practiced efficiency. 8 seconds, and 4 unconscious guards later, the emergency lights revealed Adrian holding a plasma pistol to Dax's head. "Still predictable," Adrian sighed. "Still thinking with your fists instead of your head." "No," Dax replied. "Still providing a distraction." The ceiling panel above them exploded inward as Liana dropped into the elevator, her battle form casting dazzling patterns across the confined space. Adrian's shot went wide as Dax tackled him, and the 2 men crashed through the emergency doors onto an empty floor. They fought amid half-constructed office spaces, years of shared training making their movements a deadly dance. But where Adrian was fighting with cold precision, Dax felt something else driving him. Not just duty or vengeance, but love. The same love that had made him stop for a stranger's screams in an alley. The same love that now fueled every strike, every block, every counter. When it was over, Adrian lay unconscious among scattered construction materials, and Liana was pressing the data crystal into Dax's hand. "We need to move," she said urgently. "Theron's evidence. It's worse than we thought. The consortium—" Dax silenced her with a kiss, pulling her close as adrenaline and emotion overwhelmed him. She responded with equal fervor, her skin shifting to its natural green hue as she melted against him. "Not here," she gasped, even as her fingers traced the muscles of his chest. "My safe house is compromised," he reminded her, trailing kisses down her neck. "I know a place," she whispered, her violet eyes dark with desire. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can process everything we've learned." They made it to her hidden sanctuary, a converted starship cabin in the abandoned docking district, in record time. As the door sealed behind them, all thoughts of the consortium, Adrian, and their mission faded in the face of more primal needs. Later, as they lay entwined in the starlight, filtering through the cabin's viewport, Liana traced patterns on Dax's chest. "My people have a saying," she murmured, "that the universe brings together those who are meant to create something new." Dax pulled her closer, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. "And what are we creating?" Her smile was mysterious, knowing. "The future." Dawn found Dax and Liana poring over Theron's data crystal in their starship sanctuary. The holographic displays painted their faces in harsh blue light, revealing lists of names, locations, and something far more disturbing, detailed research protocols for human experimentation. "They're targeting ex-military personnel," Dax growled, scrolling through the files. "People with proven combat experience, enhanced training." He broke off as Liana suddenly doubled over, her green skin taking on an iridescent sheen. Dax was at her side instantly, supporting her as waves of energy rippled across her form. "I'm fine," she assured him, though her voice held a note of wonder. "It's happening faster than I expected." Dax helped her to the bed, his hand lingering on her abdomen where a subtle curve was already becoming visible. "Is this normal for your species?" Liana's laugh was breathless. "Normal. A number, but then nothing about human-alien reproduction has ever been documented." Her violet eyes met his, filled with both joy and concern. "My people's pregnancies typically last 3 months, but this is accelerated even by our standards." "Because of human genetics?" "Because of you," she corrected, pulling him down beside her. "Humans have always fascinated us with their adaptability, their drive to evolve and improve. It seems even your reproductive capabilities are remarkably efficient when combined with our biology." Dax pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, marveling at how much his life had changed in just a few days. From hearing her screams in the alley to now expecting a child together, it seemed impossible, yet felt utterly right. A warning chime from the computer interrupted their moment. "Another abduction," Dax said, reluctantly returning to the displays. "Third one this week. They're accelerating their timeline." "The consortium must know we have Theron's evidence," Liana said, joining him, despite his protests. Her natural grace seemed enhanced rather than diminished by her rapidly developing condition. "They'll want to complete as many experiments as possible before we can expose them." Dax studied the latest victim's profile. "Sarah Rhodes," he read aloud. "Adrian's sister? This isn't a coincidence." "A message," Liana suggested, but Dax shook his head. "A trap. Adrian knows I'll feel responsible. He's using his own sister as bait," his jaw clenched. "And the worst part is, it's working. I can't leave her to their experiments." Liana's cool fingers traced the tension in his shoulders. "Then we don't. But we do this smart." She pulled up a map of known consortium facilities. Theron's data shows increased power usage at their research center in the old industrial zone. If they're holding anyone for experimentation, that's where they'll be. "It'll be heavily guarded," Dax warned, even as he began checking their remaining weapons. "And in your condition, in my condition, I'm stronger than ever," Liana interrupted, her skin rippling with barely contained energy. "Pregnancy among my people enhances our natural abilities. Something about the combination of hormones and shape-shifting proteins." She demonstrated by briefly shifting into her battle form, the bioluminescent patterns more intense than before. That's convenient, Dax managed, trying not to stare at how the patterns emphasized her increasingly maternal curves. Very, she agreed with a predatory smile. Especially since I can now sense other life forms more accurately. Finding Sarah will be easier than they expect. They spent the next hour planning their assault. The facility's security was formidable, but Dax's military experience combined with Liana's enhanced abilities gave them advantages their enemies couldn't anticipate. There's something else you should know, Liana said as they prepared to move out. About the baby. Dax paused in checking his plasma rifle. Is something wrong? No, quite the opposite. She took his hand and placed it on her abdomen. I can sense it's a boy, and he's extraordinary. The combination of our species' strengths, she smiled. The consortium is trying to engineer human enhancement through cruel experiments, but we've achieved something far more remarkable through love. Dax pulled her close, overwhelmed by emotions he couldn't quite name. We'll stop them, he promised. Create a safer world for our son. Of course we will, Liana said confidently. You're human after all. Your species excels at achieving the impossible. She kissed him deeply, then stepped back with a mischievous glint in her eye. Besides, I need to work off some of this pregnancy energy. What better way than destroying a secret research facility? As they made their final preparations, Dax found himself reflecting on the strange path that had led him here. One moment of compassion in a dark alley had cascaded into love, impending fatherhood, and a chance to right the wrongs of his past. Ready? Liana asked, her battle form beginning to manifest. Dax checked his weapons one last time, then nodded. Let's go save my ex-partner's sister from an evil science experiment. Just another day in the life of a human-alien power couple. Liana's laugh echoed through their sanctuary as they moved out into the neon-lit night, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. Their child, a living symbol of humanity's potential for growth and adaptation, grew stronger with each passing hour, driving them forward into an uncertain but promising future. The consortium's research facility loomed before them, its angular architecture a dark blot against New Shanghai's neon skyline. Dax led the way through the maintenance tunnels, constantly aware of Liana's labored breathing behind him. Her pregnancy had progressed dramatically in the hours since they'd left their sanctuary, her abdomen now prominently swollen with their rapidly developing child. I can feel him, Liana whispered, one hand pressed to her stomach while the other gripped Dax's shoulder. He's strong, so strong, like his father. Dax helped her navigate a particularly narrow passage, marveling at how she maintained her grace even in this condition. We should have waited. No time, she cut him off, violet eyes flashing. Sarah needs us now, and our son. He's ready, I can sense it. They reached a junction where the maintenance tunnel opened into the facility's lower levels. Security cameras swept the corridor at regular intervals, but Liana's enhanced pregnancy-boosted abilities let her predict their patterns perfectly. 3 guards ahead, she murmured, and something else. Someone familiar. Before Dax could respond, a voice echoed through the corridor. I was wondering when you'd show up, old friend. Adrian Rhodes stepped into view, but something was different about him. His skin had a metallic sheen, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural blue light. What have you done to yourself? Dax demanded, positioning himself between Adrian and Liana. Embraced evolution, Adrian replied, spreading his arms to reveal cybernetic enhancements running along his limbs. The same evolution I wanted for all of humanity. The same evolution Sarah helped me perfect. Your own sister? Dax's disgust was palpable. You experimented on your own sister? I protected her. Adrian's composure cracked. Our parents died because they were too weak, too human. I swore I'd make Sarah stronger. Make all of us stronger. His enhanced eyes fixed on Liana's pregnant form. But you've discovered something even more remarkable, haven't you? Natural human-alien hybridization, the next step in evolution, achieved through love instead of science. A contraction rippled through Liana's body, making her gasp, as Dax felt her fingers dig into his shoulder as she fought to maintain her composure. The baby's coming, she breathed. Now, Adrian's laugh was hollow. Perfect timing. Our medical bay is fully equipped. Surrender peacefully and you can birth humanity's future under optimal conditions. Counter offer, Dax said, drawing his plasma pistol. You let us leave with Sarah, and I don't have to hurt you. Always the hero, Adrian sighed. But you don't understand. Sarah isn't a prisoner. She's our success story. A figure emerged from the shadows behind Adrian. Sarah Rhodes, but like her brother, she was changed. Cybernetic implants traced patterns across her skin, pulsing with the same blue light as Adrian's eyes. The experiments worked, Dax, she said, her voice carrying a metallic undertone. We're stronger now, better. We can help Liana, help your child become even more perfect. Another contraction hit Liana, stronger this time. But instead of weakening her, it triggered her battle form. Bioluminescent patterns rippled across her skin, more intense than ever, creating a protective cocoon of light around her swollen abdomen. Our child, she said through gritted teeth, is already perfect. What happened next was a blur of motion and light. Sarah and Adrian attacked simultaneously, their enhanced bodies moving with impossible speed. But Dax had fought alongside Adrian for years, and he knew his patterns, his weaknesses. And now, with Liana's safety and their child's future at stake, he fought with a fury that surprised even him. Liana, despite being in labor, proved equally formidable. Her pregnancy-enhanced abilities let her predict and counter Sarah's movements. Her battle form's disorienting patterns confusing the cybernetic targeting systems. You don't understand what you're fighting against, Adrian shouted as Dax landed a crushing blow to his cybernetic arm. The consortium knows humanity's potential. They'll never stop. No, Dax cut him off. You don't understand what you're fighting against. Real strength isn't about modifications or experiments. It's about choice, compassion, love. As if in response to his words, Liana let out a cry that shook the corridor. The bioluminescent patterns around her intensified, forming a protective sphere of pure energy. Dax, she called, her voice thick with both pain and joy. He's coming! Sarah, momentarily distracted by the display, lowered her guard. Dax seized the opportunity, using Adrian's own momentum to throw him into his sister. They crashed into a control panel, electrical sparks flying as their cybernetic enhancements short-circuited. Dax rushed to Liana's side as the sphere of energy pulsed with increasing intensity. The air itself seemed to vibrate with potential as their son, this impossible, wonderful miracle, prepared to enter the world. I love you, he whispered, supporting her as another contraction hit. Both of you. Liana's response was lost in a final, triumphant cry as the energy sphere erupted in a flash of blinding light. When it faded, a new sound filled the corridor, the healthy wail of a newborn child. Their son was perfect, green-skinned like his mother but with Dax's dark hair and strong features, and his eyes, when they opened, were the most remarkable shade of violet blue anyone had ever seen. Adrian and Sarah, their cybernetic enhancements fried by the energy pulse, stared in wonder at the child. In that moment, seeing what natural evolution and love could create, their beliefs about forced enhancement crumbled. He's beautiful, Sarah whispered, her metallic voice softening. This is what real evolution looks like. Adrian, for once, had no words. In the days that followed, the consortium's experiments were exposed, their facilities shut down. Adrian and Sarah, freed from their enhancements, began the long process of redemption by helping other victims recover. Dax and Liana named their son Alexander, meaning defender of mankind, a fitting name for a child who represented the best of both human and alien potential. His existence sparked a new era of human-alien relations, proving that the greatest advances came not through force or experimentation, but through understanding and love. As they stood in their starship sanctuary, watching Alexander grow stronger each day, Dax reflected on how it had all begun, with a simple choice to answer a cry for help in a dark alley. What are you thinking about? Liana asked, pressing against him as their son slept peacefully nearby. About how the greatest adventures start with the smallest acts of kindness, he replied, pulling her close, and how sometimes saving someone else means saving yourself. Liana's laugh was as musical as ever. Such a human perspective, she teased, always finding profound meaning in simple choices. Simple choices that led to you, he reminded her, to us, to him. To the future, she agreed, kissing him deeply as New Shanghai's Eternal neon glow painted their sanctuary in colors of promise and possibility.